North Korea has been in the news and on people's minds a lot recently, but people still have a lot of questions like, how did we get here and what's going to happen? So we found an expert to answer those questions, but not our questions, your questions. Asked by you, submitted by you on North Korea.
My name is Thomas Lee. I'm a professor of international law at Fordham Law School in New York. I was a U.S. Naval Intelligence Officer serving in the Western Pacific aboard ships and submarines and stationed ashore in Korea and Japan.
There was an article stating that North Korea is begging for a war. Is there actually going to be a war?
I don't think that there's going to be a war, but I have to admit that every month, it seems since the beginning of this year, the likelihood of a war has grown. Every subsequent North Korean missile test, with every reaction by the Trump administration. And I don't think either side really wants war, despite the rhetoric and despite the dangerous moves, but the potential to create a powder keg situation where accidental moves result in actual military actions and deaths is becoming more and more possible.
How much of North Korea's arsenal is actually real and how much of it is actually propaganda just trying to intimidate other countries?
We don't know with 100% accuracy how much of their nuclear arsenal is real or fake. We do know that they recently exploded a very large bomb underground, and judging from the extent of the earthquake tremors, we estimate that it was a very powerful nuclear explosion. It could be the case that they're faking it. Their missiles, we know from how long they flew and where they landed, that they can fire missiles that can go a certain direction if they were directed straight toward their target. We don't know yet whether they can combine the two, the nuclear weapons payloads and the missiles, and if they do, whether they can fire it at a sufficient trajectory so that it can come back into the atmosphere and not burn up and deliver its warhead on target. There's a pretty good chance that if they don't have that capability now, they're going to have it very soon.
What is it like to be a typical citizen there? Not like anything fancy, just typical.
It sucks. I mean, basically, you live your life for really basic things. And basically, you work and you eat, you live just to live. It's a very brutal life.
How are North Koreans able to educate themselves on what's happening in their country if all of the media and literature and everything else that they're able to absorb is highly controlled?
The state is everywhere in North Korea. They feed them a certain story of what their country is and what the rest of the world is. And in that version, North Korea is the center of the universe. It's a powerful state. Kim Jong-un is a world-class leader. The United States is the great Satan. They're evil. They've sought to destroy North Korea ever since the Great Patriotic Wars, what they call the Korean War, almost 70 years ago. And if you live near the border, the South maintains propaganda operations to try to influence people in the North, but you have a very limited opportunity for learning things outside of what the government is telling you.
Who does Kim Jong-un's haircut?
If you look at his haircuts, they are purposefully trying to make him look like his grandfather, Kim Il-sung, who was the founder of North Korea and probably the most revered leader in the North. And so they're consciously trying to give him the haircut that that person had.
My question for you is, how is the food in North Korea?
The best food in North Korea is a cold gazpacho noodle made of buckwheat. And the food is called naengmyeon, which literally means cold noodles. You cut some fresh pears and cucumbers and you mix it with vinegar and a broth made from beef, and it's delicious.
Like, what advantages do China or maybe Russia have to be North Korea's ally?
I think a lot of it is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Japan and South Korea are both very close U.S. allies, and North Korea is in a very strategic position, and the United States to both China and Russia are the greatest potential threats, the great economy and so forth. It is in neither of those countries' interests for North Korea to go away. They would prefer a nuclear North Korea to regime change on favorable terms to the United States and North Korea.
How and when will all of this end?
The likeliest scenario, and it's by far not the ideal scenario, is that the North Koreans will get nuclear weapons, and the United States will have to live with a world in which there is a nuclear North Korea. If the North Koreans were to use nuclear weapons, it would be very difficult for the regime to survive because the United States and South Korea would have to retaliate with overwhelming military force.
So all of those questions were from people around the world using our new app, Panels. We're still in beta, but the app lets anyone be a part of the conversations we're having. This video was an experiment with the app, and I think it was great. The questions submitted were great. So I hope Thomas Lee was able to help your understanding of what's going on in North Korea. Please let us know below what other topics you'd like to see us explore this way, and if you have any other creative ideas for how we can use our new app. To all those who submitted questions, even those we weren't able to use, thank you for being a part of Beme News. See you next time.